The Zephyrian mining facility on Kepler 4042b operated with the precision of a clockwork mechanism. For 3 centuries, the insectoid overlords had maintained their empire through a simple formula: capture, chain, and extract. Their slave races, the amphibious Nereid, the crystalline Vorthon, and dozens of others, worked the deep shafts without question, their spirits broken long before their bodies gave out. Then they brought in the human. Commander Kethvar clicked his mandibles in satisfaction as he watched the guards drag the unconscious biped into Processing Bay 7. Earth had finally fallen after a brutal 6-month siege, and this specimen represented the first of what would surely be millions of new workers. The human looked unremarkable: pale skin, brown hair, average build. Nothing like the terrifying war beast the Confederation propaganda had described. Designation? Kethvar asked his aide. Marcus Chen, former lieutenant of the Terran Defense Corps. Age 32, engineering background. Perfect. Send him to Sector 12. The quantum resonance extractors need maintenance. The human awoke 3 days later in a cramped cell, neural inhibitor collar locked around his neck, titanium shackles binding his wrists and ankles. Around him, dozens of other beings huddled in similar conditions. A Nereid in the adjacent cell watched him with large, luminous eyes. First time? The amphibian asked in broken galactic standard. I am Gluvel. Been here 7 cycles. Marcus sat up slowly, testing his restraints. The collar would prevent any aggressive thoughts from forming into action, he knew. Standard Zephyrian tech. Marcus, he replied. How long do most survive? Depends. Humans unknown quantity. Maybe 1 cycle, maybe less. Marcus looked around the cell block. 43 beings from at least 8 different species, all showing the vacant stare of the thoroughly defeated. The sight sparked something in his chest, not anger, which the collar would suppress, but something else. Something the Zephyrians hadn't accounted for. Hope. Over the following weeks, Marcus worked the quantum extractors, his engineering mind automatically cataloging inefficiencies in the system. But more importantly, he talked. During meal periods, in the work queues, in the brief moments between shifts, he spoke to his fellow prisoners. He told Gluvel about Earth's oceans, painting pictures of vast blue expanses that made the Nereid's gills flutter with longing. He described to the crystalline Vorthon worker named Zixtel the concept of art for its own sake, not the functional beauty the Zephyrians demanded, but creativity born from joy. To the massive Goliath called Thrum, he spoke of music that wasn't just work songs, but melodies that expressed the inexpressible. But why? Gluvel asked one evening. Why tell us things that make the collar hurt? Marcus smiled grimly. The neural inhibitor activated whenever his thoughts turned to resistance or violence, sending jolts of pain through his nervous system. But it couldn't suppress imagination. It couldn't stop him from dreaming, or more importantly, from sharing those dreams. Because remembering who we were is the first step to remembering who we can be. Weeks turned to months. Marcus's stories spread through the cell blocks like wildfire. He taught the others to think beyond their current existence, not in terms of escape or rebellion, which would trigger the collars, but in terms of identity. He helped them remember their cultures, their histories, their fundamental worth as sentient beings. The change was subtle at first. Workers began standing a little straighter. They started helping each other, sharing food, offering comfort. The Zephyrian guards noticed the shift but couldn't pinpoint its source. Productivity remained high. Compliance was maintained, yet something had fundamentally altered in the facility's atmosphere. Commander Kethvar grew increasingly uneasy. Reports filtering in from other facilities showed similar patterns wherever humans had been placed. Not rebellion, the collars prevented that, but something else. Something the Zephyrians had no word for. The breakthrough came during Marcus's 8th month of captivity. While working on a particularly complex quantum resonance array, he realized the human concept he'd been teaching his fellow prisoners had a name in galactic standard after all. He just hadn't recognized it because the Zephyrians had systematically purged it from their slaves' vocabularies. That evening, he gathered his cell block around him. I've figured out what we've been doing, he said quietly. What we've been building together. The Zephyrians have a word for it, buried in their oldest texts. They stopped using it because they were afraid of it. The assembled beings leaned closer, multiple species united in curiosity. The word is Morthak. It means the fire that burns in the heart of thinking beings. The thing that makes us more than just our biology or our circumstances. Marcus paused, seeing understanding dawn in dozens of alien eyes. In human terms, we call it dignity. The revelation spread like a quantum cascade. Not the concept itself. Marcus had been teaching that for months, but the name. Having a word for it gave shape to what they'd been feeling, made it real in a way that transcended species barriers. 6 months later, when the Galactic Liberation Front finally reached Kepler 442b, they found something unprecedented in the history of Zephyrian occupation. The mining facility was still operational, the workers still chained, the guards still in control. But the psychological foundation of slavery had crumbled. The enslaved beings walked with dignity. They helped each other with dignity. They looked their captors in the eye with dignity. And when the liberation forces arrived, they didn't find broken slaves desperately grateful for rescue. They found an intact community that had never truly been conquered, ready to rebuild their lives not as victims but as survivors. Commander Kethvar, facing war crimes tribunals, would later claim that the human had somehow sabotaged the neural inhibitors. Technical analysis proved this false. The collars had worked perfectly, suppressing every rebellious thought, every violent impulse. They simply hadn't been designed to suppress the one thing that made humans human, the unshakable belief that even in chains, they remained free. Marcus Chen was posthumously awarded the Galactic Medal of Honor for his actions on Kepler 442b. But his real monument lived on in the hundreds of beings who remembered his simple lesson, that no force in the universe could chain the spirit that refuses to be broken. Freedom, he had taught them, wasn't something that could be given or taken away. It was something you simply chose to be.